A warm welcome and formal welcome to all of you to this Ask Me Anything session with Kunal Ashar, who is a senior QA engineer at Xendit. On the topic choosing the right automation tools for your automation testing. Before I move forward, huge shout out to Browser Stack, who are our exclusive sponsor for all our community events and premium sponsor for all our conferences. It's due to companies like Browser Stack that we're able to do these kind of events at such a scale regularly without charging anything to our community members. About Kunal, Kunal is a senior QA engineer at Xendit in Singapore. He brings over a decade of testing and automation expertise. Uh, as an automation enthusiast, Kunal excels in crafting sustainable automation frameworks for CI and utilizing open source tools to provide feedback to businesses. Kunal has trained over 500 testers and loves sharing his extensive knowledge. Kunal is also a fitness freak. If you follow him on Instagram, you can see a lot of his workout videos and in general, a lot of his physical activities in general. So with that, let me call.
Hey Ashutosh, hey everyone.
Hey, good to see you, Kunal, and hoping forward for a great chat on selecting the right automation tools.
Yep, looking forward for some interesting question.
Uh,
Correct.
we believe that selecting the right automation tools is vital for precise and swift task automation, which
Correct.
can result in substantial time and resource savings and enhance overall efficiency. So, folks, in today's session, we'll explore automation's benefits, the importance of understanding the requirements, and key factors to consider when choosing an automation tool. So, make sure that you watch this session till the end and make the most out of this. Let's start, okay? Folks, I will be asking questions which we've pre-collected from the community and designed some of them ourselves. But at the same time, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A tab, and I will be happy to take them as and when possible. If the questions related to the current question which we're discussing, I will take it right away. Otherwise, I will take it in the end. So please feel free to use the Q&A tab for more questions. Kunal, first question, okay? Before I jump into automation tools and what's your framework for choosing them, I'll ask you first. I'll ask you the first question. Okay, what do you think is the most important aspect in automating tests?
Mm, I would say the most important aspect is to be a user and to simulate user flow,
Hmm.
and you automate that user journey, user flow,
Hmm.
rather than automating everything that you feel has to be done. Like
Correct.
for me, if my user is going through a journey where they are onboarding to an application, they submit their business details, they submit the documents and stuff. For me, that's the primary use of onboarding a merchant, right? So that's a high priority use case for me to
Got
automate
it.
that, because that cannot break. I
Got it.
don't mind taking care of field validations a bit later on,
Hmm.
but my primary flow is something which I would like to automate first.
Got it. So any other aspect which you want to highlight right away on this, apart from being a user?
Come again.
I mean, I'm asking any other aspect which you want to highlight when starting automation test apart from being a user?
Uh, Apart from being a user, you can look at the different flows or the areas of your business that brings in money.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you have heard of the 80/20 rule, right?
Correct, correct, correct,
So 20% of your application will bring like 80% of business value. So
correct.
look in terms of ROI, which flows are bringing in more money.
Hmm.
Target that flows first rather than
Hmm.
automating everything. Or
Got it.
look from revenue perspective or business
Got
growth
it.
perspective, which
Makes
has
sense.
more vertical, and try
Hmm.
to target those areas first.
Hmm. Got it. So you're saying to be a user first, and at the same time, also from a business perspective, look at what kind of flows or what kind of pages will bring in the most revenue, and then look at them if you want to automate them or not.
No, I would say definitely automate that, because
Oh. No,
if
but if
if
they
that breaks, your revenue stops, right?
correct. But do you agree to this that all the revenue generating flows will be automatable, or how do you see that
Uh,
automatability of the revenue generating flows?
Depends how your application is designed. So, for example, let's say you ask user for their phone number and
Got it.
you trigger an SMS for OTP.
Got it.
So, to automate that kind of flow, you might need more than one tool to do that, but that is automable. Or you can have a webhook. You can
Hmm.
speak with your developer saying, "Give me a bypass route,
Hmm.
just so that I can bypass the OTP step. I don't have to
Hmm.
use a new tool for that, and
Hmm.
then I can continue rest of the flow."
Got it. Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Now we have discussed in brief about the important aspects of automation. So with that, I would now go into specific questions with which deal about choosing the right automation tool. Uh, First question, Kunal, on choosing automation tools. Okay, what are the key considerations you think one should keep in mind when selecting an automation tool for a new project? What are the five, or let's say three, important factors which one should keep in mind when they want to select a tool for a new project?
Mm, there are quite a few things. So when we say we want to automate something, which means we already know there is a problem
Correct.
that we want to solve using a tool.
Correct.
Now the question is how to go about the tool. So the first thing which I tell everyone is list down your requirement, like what all sort of items you want the tool to do for you.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter what kind of tool you want to go with, but first at
Hmm.
least have your requirement with you.
Hmm.
That's the first thing. Second thing
Hmm.
is have the end goal.
Hmm.
So let's say my end goal would be I want to run 50 users in parallel on five different browsers at a time.
Hmm.
That's my end goal.
Hmm.
So from my requirement, we have to look for a tool that meets our end goal.
Hmm.
If not a single tool, then probably a combination of tool.
Hmm.
That's the second thing.
Hmm.
And the third thing is understanding the people who will be using the tool.
Hmm.
So for example, there are a lot of development approaches like TDD, BDD.
Hmm.
So who is going to use it?
Hmm.
What all language people already know? So if you're going for a full code tool, then if there are five people on your team,
Hmm.
are all of them aware with Java, JavaScript, TypeScript? What
Got
is the skill set level? And that will help us to drill down like what is the best solution tool that we can go forward with.
it. Got it. So, okay. So, so saying your requirement and end goal is one criteria. Then people skill is another criteria which we should, which we should consider while choosing a new tool. How important is are aspects like, let's say, the tech stack and the
Mhm.
cost while choosing automation tool?
Okay, good point. So one thing which I would like to add in my previous answer is evaluate the urgency of starting your automation. So if you have a freedom saying you have time to build framework in 6 months, then probably you can go with a tool where you have to write all the code by yourself. Like Selenium is one of the example.
Hmm.
Selenium test engine, those kind of structure.
Hmm.
But if you want a ready-made framework where you directly start writing your user flow, user journey, then you need a library like that, which is Cypress, Playwright, where you don't build those capability. It comes with those inbuilt capabilities. So
Hmm.
it helps you to save a lot of investment money in terms of people, in terms of resources, and you
Got it.
can directly start seeing output from a week or two.
Hmm. Got it. And how important is tech stack in general?
Tech stack is quite important, and my usual recommendation is to keep the tech stack same as your developer tech stack. So
Okay.
if they are using Java for coding language, go with
Hmm.
Java. So
Hmm.
even if you're less on headcount, you
Hmm.
can bring in developers to contribute on it.
Got it. That's intelligent advice. But
Correct.
would developers be wanting to do automation?
Yes, in my company they are.
Okay, same as
And
me.
I think so far I have been part of like 4 5 organization.
Hmm.
And if you ask a developer for help or if you ask them to contribute, they are willing
Hmm.
to do it.
Got it. Interesting. So let me summarize this, okay, for the sake of simplicity for people. So the most important aspects which could be which are important for choosing the right automation tool are first your requirements and your end goal. Okay. Then understanding the skills of the team which will be using the tool. Third is the time available with us at how urgent it is. And fourth, of course, is the tech stack, which we recommend to have the same tech stack as a development team so that we can leverage each other's skills and learnings in general. So, thank you for this answer, Kunal. I have a lot of audience questions coming in. I'll take it after this question.
Okay.
Uh, okay. Okay, now let's say we select a new tool. We have finalized a new tool and we're going ahead with this. Now, every new tool will come with a certain learning curve. It's not that
Correct.
we'll know the tool from right away. So, what are
Yep.
your advices to people to advance the learning curve? That how can they learn? How can they reduce the learning time, and how can they increase? How can they reduce the learning time and reduce the ramp up time in general?
Uh, if you have selected the tool, then I'm assuming you know the coding language that the tool is using. You know
Hmm,
a bit about how to interact with UI, how to interact with API.
hmm,
So the only learning curve that I see here is understanding how the tool operates, so you can
hmm,
have that mental picture like how to go about it. So
hmm,
look for project documentation.
hmm,
Like Cypress has a good documentation. You can go
hmm,
word by word and you will get everything.
hmm,
Look for community forums where you can
hmm,
freely ask a question.
hmm,
Uh, Third thing which I recommend is to look at the market trend.
hmm,
So if you are saying out of Cypress playwright something else, we decided to go for Cypress, but what if the Cypress demand is falling in the market? Community is dying or something is happening. Just an example, nothing against Cypress, but to give you a context. So look at those market trend, how many libraries are being downloaded for all the tools that you had selected, and why did you choose a particular tool over
got
it.
it. Got it. Got it. So largely you're saying to use the project documentation and the community forums for a faster learning of the tool, right?
Correct.
Got it.
And you can, I think there are a lot of YouTube videos nowadays.
Of course, YouTube
Any
videos is a
YouTube,
common answer for learning in general.
correct, yeah, yeah.
Got it. We have a lot of audience question. I will take a few to start with.
Sure.
Okay. This is a question from Bharat Keswan, who's a senior QA currently from Coimbatore. Okay.
Mm.
Uh, he's saying when we want to design our own automation tool, I'm assuming, let's say, he's saying when we want to design our own automation framework, what kind of things should be considered?
Uh, I would like to clarify it with Bharat first because tool and framework they both have different
Yeah.
approach.
So, Bharat, when you put this in chat, are you looking for a designing your own automation tool, or designing your own automation framework? So then Kunal can take the right framework. He's saying framework.
Okay. Thank you, Bharat. So, good question. I have a session on this in Workforce as well.
Okay, but you can tell
Build.
us in brief. Then.
Okay. So, again, have your end goal in picture because if you are designing a framework, then the libraries that you are using, are they capable of achieving what you want? So, for example, if you use TestNG, you know you can run things in parallel. If you use Selenium, you know there is a support for Selenium Grid where you can TestNG can communicate and send those things in parallel thread pool. So if you want to run it in single threaded, have those requirements in front of you, and there is no a single key for designing framework. framework designing happens gradually when you see a part of your code is repeating at multiple places. So what you will do is you will abstract it, you will put it in a separate class file, or you will create a function to make sure it's reusable, it's scalable. So that's how a framework is designed. You identify certain pain points in your existing code, you try to extract it outside, and then you design a framework. And then if you have a lot of data and you want your framework to work with all those data by itself, you say, okay, let me design a data driven framework. So same scenario can run with 50 different data set. So just a brief answer like how to go about building a framework. Uh, Bharat, let me know if that answers your question.
But does it answer your question? You can type. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
And then thank you, Kunal, for this answer. I'll take another audience question.
Sure.
I think I'll take this is slightly an outlier question, but I'll still take it from Dayanand. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, let's say you can recommend what strategy or approach would you recommend for automation of an enterprise cloud application? If you can recommend something from your experience or from your knowledge of the community in general.
Mm, can I have an example of enterprise cloud application? If an application is hosted on cloud, or do you want to test the infrastructure that is hosting the application?
But Dayanand, can you answer Kunal's question? Oracle Fusion ERP is saying so.
Oracle Fusion ERP. I'm sorry, I'm not aware about that. Give me 1 second. Oracle. Can we come back to this question
Yeah,
later
sure,
on?
sure.
Because I'm
We'll,
not
we
aware
can
about this.
we can
So,
come back to this question a little later. That's okay. It's okay. 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 Now, Kunal, I move a step back. We have identified these steps to. We have identified the most important aspects in choosing the right automation tool. Now we have identified. Okay, this is the tool which you want to choose. Okay.
correct.
Now organizations will have their constraints. Management will have their constraints. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, what's your what's your tip to people to convince the management? And I know this would melt your heart a little because you're coming from a startup environment, and I know how much convincing you must be doing every day. So how do we convince the management or the stakeholders about that why we need this tool, and if they don't get convinced, what's the plan B we have in place?
Okay. I think for startup it is bit easy because everything has to be quick. You have to
Yeah,
make decisions on your feet. So there, I don't think it requires much of an convincing if you are using everything open source. Convincing is needed when you have to pay for something.
correct. In that case,
So,
yes. I'm asking in that case, let's say when you want to
uh,
get something to be paid.
so what we usually follow is justify the outcome of it. So people are ready to invest. Even your CEO, CTO, they have their own budget which they can put in the tool. What you need to tell them is what is the problem, how this tool can solve that problem, and what is the return on investment. So if they are putting in, let's say, 500 rupees,
Hmm.
then is it saving them 5,000, is it saving them 50,000 or 5 lakh? You
Hmm.
justify those numbers, you give them metrics, and you give them a target metrics as well. By
Hmm.
implementing this, we will reduce our execution time by one fourth, one eighth, or half. And you give them result after 3 month, after 6 month, incrementally,
Hmm.
showing that the money was well put. So if you have some other initiative after that where you need money from the management, it's an easier
Hmm.
cycle because they know you are on the right path.
Got it. I think that's a very valid answer, and I think very few managers would understand that justifying ROI is one of the most important aspect of getting someone to convince for a tool or let's say even a headcount. So
Correct.
I think that's a very important aspect. Okay. Uh, uh, I'll take an audience question in the middle right now. This is from Okay, there is a counter question on Kunal we discussed before that we
Okay.
can learn from YouTube videos. So, and I think this is valid for documentation also,
Hmm.
and for community forums also. That if we face an issue and we get stuck, then our questions don't get resolved, and we try to give up. So, how do we navigate this kind of situation? Because YouTube videos, documentation, we can't interact a human in general.
Correct. I have been in this situation time. So what I do is, whatever error I'm getting, I try to feed it on Google. I go through n number of Stack Overflows, internal thread, other discussion forum, Google forum, and you will see like 8 to 10 solutions, and not all of them will work for you. So basically go through every solution, see what is working, what is not working. Once I have a working solution with me, I try to understand why this one works and other doesn't work. So I become more mature about the tool that I'm using as well. So sometimes there's no straightforward answer, it's all research and try to implement. If it works, understand why it works.
Got it. Got it. Uh, okay. This is a question about. Uh, Okay. Can you give us a recent example, of course, without revealing a lot of details, in
Mhm.
general, about when you had to choose between different automation tools? For that specific case, what factors did you consider and what was the outcome without revealing a lot of details which might be confidential?
No, I can reveal some of the details. So
Okay.
we in Xendit, we are using Cypress for
Okay.
UI and API automation. And Xendit is mainly a payment related company where we provide a lot of APIs. So running those APIs from Cypress is causing a lot of slowness.
Got
For API, we want instant feedback, right? So Cypress is capable of making API call, but when you talk about like 100,000, 200,000 calls,
it.
it is not giving you a prompt feedback like a postman would do, for example.
Hmm. Got it.
So that's when we were like, okay, if we want faster feedback than Cypress, then what tools can we look for? And we found an open source library which can cut down the execution speed. It
Hmm.
gives faster feedback, and we can integrate that with deployment cycles. So
Hmm.
developer doesn't have to wait a longer time to see if the build is healthy or not.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. Very interesting. Uh, there was a question from Afsal. I think it is about to come. Okay. Uh, this is a question from Satish, not related to the topic as such, but more about what kind of automation tool to choose or testing to use. So, what type of automation testing is best suited for CD pipeline test execution? Like, should we include smoke or sanity or something else also? So, what kind of testing should we do for CD pipeline, especially in automation?
Depends how long your pipeline is running. So
Okay.
if you say I'm running my smoke test from CI pipeline, but my smoke test takes 2 hours, then it is not giving value to anyone. So if your smoke test can give you result in like 5-10 minutes, it's like nothing like that. It
Hmm.
can help business, it can help developer. So run any kind of suite, smoke, sanity, regression, end-to-end flow, user journey, or just business critical case, doesn't matter. The main thing is how quick can you give feedback to your developers. So
Hmm.
let's say you have a very complex application where you have to run 200 cases in your smoke out of a suite of, let's say, 5,000 scenarios, which is still okay. But can you give them feedback in 5 to 10 minutes despite the number of scenarios you are running? That gives
Got
them
it.
more value.
Got it. So, like Dan is saying, build acceptance test or feature acceptance test, but the main factor here is that it should be giving them the feedback sooner, as soon as possible,
Correct.
so that they can make the changes if required. Right? I think that's very helpful, and I think Dan also gave us a good input here. Okay. There is
Yep.
again a question from Afzal, who is the principal editor at Charge B. Okay. Uh, I think a very valid question. What
Hmm.
strategies or steps should we take in order to reduce the customer reported issues arising in a specific module, even when we have a good automation suite and a good coverage? And this happens primarily because complex user workflow exists, which can be predicted. So, what kind of strategies and steps would you recommend in such a case?
Okay, we had this kind of situations before, and so and or we need to trace the data flow, for example. So when user is adding a data, there is something breaking in the journey and data is not reaching to the database. So understand your infra, because your front end will only tell you certain things. You can only test certain thing via your front end, but your infra plays a big role. So that's why we test our infra as well. So let's say your customer is like, I'm trying to submit a request, but I got unable to submit it. When you try, you are able to submit it. Those kind of flaky situations. So in some cases, what happens, your infra was overloaded because so many merchants were trying to submit the request that for some of them it got timed out. So understand how your infra is capable of handling those things, simulate those infra related errors, and then scale up your infra based on how many customers are interacting with your application. So that is one of the area that you can look for. Trace the data at infra level and see which infra can create a potential blocker or fail.
God, I think it's Abdul, that answers your questions. You can reply in chat if that answers your question. I think she might reply a little late. That's okay. Uh, my next question to you is 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 we have discussed about how to choose a tool, what factors to consider, how to learn a tool, how to convince someone. Uh, what are the challenges which you have faced in general while deploying a new automation tool? So you learn a tool, you start to deploy it. You will face a lot of challenges. What are the top challenges which you have faced and how do you solve them?
I think the main issue with deploying or onboarding a new tool is like convincing people, because no one wants to change their current working flow. They are like, we are happy with what we have. Why do you want to bring something new? Why do you want to go through learning curve again and stuff? So people convincing is a skill which everyone should have, because you will face a lot of blockers just to convince people. You know it's a good tool. You have all the statistics and everything to back it, but convincing people is another challenge which takes a lot of time. Then bringing everyone on the same page. Everyone comes from different region. All of them has their own valid point. So try to figure out a balance between what to accept, what to filter out, and then come up with a collaborative solution, I would say, rather than saying what I bring to the table is the most
Is
accurate or
the
the
right
correct. Yeah.
valid? I think that's a very valid thing, and I think people are resistive to change, and I think getting people to change is certainly one of the must be one of the most important challenges you might have to face. Got it. Okay. Now that the tool is deployed, okay, we have figured out, we have convinced people to change.
Okay.
Now every tool is now evolving. Tool is now evolving,
Correct.
right? No tools development stops. So we have Selenium 1, 2, 3, 4, and similarly other versions keep coming in. So how do we keep a track of the latest developments in a tool? And well, that is first part of my question. How do we keep a track? A, and B, how do we regularly leverage the newer features or the change features coming in tools in our live projects, which we are using?
For your first question, how do we track? I think most of open source license, they have their code base exposed. They have their planning board exposed where you see what are they currently working on in
Hmm.
terms of feature, what bugs
Hmm.
are they currently fixing.
Hmm.
So you can keep track of all those via, I think Git repository gives you insight, or they
Hmm.
might have a separate project page
Hmm.
or a website documentation saying this is what we are working on and stuff. So you can keep track of all those things from there.
Hmm.
For paid licenses, it's a different thing because they don't want to reveal what new they are building, else their
Correct.
competitor might copy it. So they might not
Correct.
give those kind of insight.
Hmm.
Like, but if you are a paid customer, you
Hmm.
can drop an email to the support staff saying, "Hey, what's next in your roadmap?" And because you're paying them money, they will reply to you
They will
as
reply to
an
you. Correct.
internal communication and not as a public one.
Got it. That makes sense. I got a point. And
And
how do we
yours?
leverage the new change features, newer features in our deployment?
Okay. Uh, Depends if there's a problem. So for me, let's say if I'm working with TestNG, then
Hmm.
if TestNG is releasing something new, if the feature is not useful to me or
Hmm.
to the project that I'm working on, I
Hmm.
won't go to the next version because
Hmm.
going to the next version means something will break from my current version
Hmm.
if it's a breaking change.
Hmm.
So I think it happened with Java 7 to Java 8, where Java 8 introduced a lot of streams, Lambda, and stuff. And people were like, it's good, but what's wrong with
Hmm.
writing a simple for loop?
Correct.
So people were reluctant to change, to go ahead because they were able to do same stuff with the lower version. So there was no urgency to upgrade. So if someone is forcing you to upgrade, then you upgrade. Or
Hmm.
if there is a really interesting feature that you need on your project or framework to help your framework improve, then I upgrade.
Got it. No, makes sense. Got it. Okay. Um, um, okay. Now the tool is deployed. We are regularly able to do the changes. You have, like mentioned, you've convinced someone on the basis of a ROI based approach. Okay, this is the ROI
Correct.
which you might see. Correct. Okay. Uh, so now, what is your tactic or what is your tips for people to start measuring the effectiveness of the tool which they have chosen? How do they do it?
Okay, so effectiveness can be measured in a few ways. One is the amount of time you invest.
Hmm.
So again, I'll fall back to Selenium versus Cypress. So in Selenium, I have to invest a lot of time to create a base class, to create those packaging structure. I'm not
Hmm.
even talking about framework building, just simple. If you want to make a call from few test cases or few scenarios, you have to write some reusable function. Whereas other libraries are giving you inbuilt solution for that. They give
Hmm.
you inbuilt capabilities, configurations, everything. So the time invested to onboard a new tool, that's
Hmm.
one factor.
Hmm.
Then I would say the execution time, reduction in execution time. So let's say if I'm doing functional testing by myself of
Hmm.
200 scenarios, how much time that is taking? Let's say 100 hours.
Hmm.
If I invest 30 hours on any tool in building those scenarios and I give you feedback in, let's say, 2 hours, I run all
Hmm.
the scenarios, I give you feedback in 2 hours rather than taking 2 3 days to give you a feedback,
Hmm.
then that's your ROI.
Hmm.
If you are investing something, this is how you're getting return, and all the time saved can be utilized somewhere else, non-functional testing or doing shift left, being involved in other areas of the project.
Hmm. Got it. But I'm going to step back again because it just struck me, Kunal. Okay, how
Sure.
important are dev teams' inputs while selecting the automation tool,
Mm,
or is it independent to test teams only, from your understanding and experience?
it depends. for how QA and dev wavelength is within the org, if they see eye to eye or not. So, what we generally do is whatever PR we create, we have one dev reviewer. And why do we do that is to give developers the feeling that this is not isolated QA thing. This is a
Exactly.
common thing which we both
Interesting.
own. So the first step is tell them we need some feedback based on the code we are writing. Get them involved in PR reviews. Once they are familiar with that, give them small changes. Hey, this part you are developing something. Can you also fix the automation for it? Can you make this minor change? So, developer inputs are valuable. Once they start giving input, involve them more. So, if you are doing like automating 10 scenarios in a day, with developer help, you can speed up to 12, 13, 14, but still in substantial increase, right, from 10 to 15.
Correct. What about very interesting, I think. It's a very interesting tactic in general. So, I think this is again very important question because we see a lot of tools sunsetting also these days. Okay, we saw a test project going suddenly going away from the market. And so, are there any vitals other than the official website announcements? This is a question again from Satish. Are there any vitals other than the official website announcements to watch out for it to losing support? So, are there any red flags which you might see before itself, before the company announces that they are okay sunsetting a particular tool?
Uh, so far, I think what we can do is you can look at the number of issues in the backlog. Like, are they resolving the issues or they are just staying there alive for a longer period of time? You can, in Git, we can see the commit graph, right? So, see if some commits are happening gradually, they will give you a trend like 5 commits or 5 features merge. So look at those things. If they are going at a steady rate, if they are increasing or declining. That's why in the beginning of the call I mentioned, look at how many libraries are being downloaded. Compare that so you know if it's on a declining trend or if it's an increasing trend. That helps you a bit to make a decision, but you never know when the community picks it up again and it shoots to the sky.
Got it. I think it makes sense. Good hacks to check it. Got it. Okay. This is this question from. Okay, this is a very fundamental question. Okay,
Okay.
but I would like you to attempt, and I would like a lot of other senior testers here or testers in general to comment on this in chat, so that we can have a collaborative answer to this. How, how do you select? I know this is a very fundamental question, but I think we should
Yep.
still address because a lot of people who might still be asking these kind of questions. What test cases should be selected for UI automation and what for API automation, from your understanding?
Okay. Good question. For UI, like we mentioned in the beginning, follow 80-20 rule. 20% of your business will have 80% critical flows, which brings more revenue than other part of your application. So target that. But please make sure UI is expensive in terms of execution and giving feedback. So don't write login, add item, select item, increase quantity as separate flows. What a general practice would be, whatever is your application flow, put it on a mind map or some other structure. Understand the journey from one part of the application to the end. Automate that flow. So one flow would be login, search item, add to basket, checkout. Second flow would be login, search item, add to basket, delete basket, for example. So simulate that flows, and when you are doing UI automation, don't use 100% of the UI for that. Get your prerequisite done via API. So if I want to test removing an item from the basket, I can put an item in the basket using an API. I can have my session captured on first login, so I don't have to re-log in all the time. I can just go and focus on that particular piece of flow that I want to test via UI. So I covered two things. One is how to pick your business critical flows. And then once you have identified the flows, how do you mix your UI and API to get your end result rather than consuming a lot of time and doing repetitive steps?
Got it.
That's for UI. Let me know if it helps.
I think they will reply in some time. You can go ahead, Kunal.
For API, understand if your application or API is customer facing or internal API. If it is an internal API, which is protected behind VPN or something that your customer cannot access, no need to do n number of scenarios or testing on it. Do basic flow. Sorry, no need to automate all those things. For testing, yes, test your API as much as you can, break it down as much as you can to make sure they work in all possible scenarios. From automation point of view, cover data submission with required field, mandatory field. If you have different paths in API, cover those things, but don't go too exhaustive saying for a boolean true field I want to send 0 and see what happens. That will not happen because your customer cannot select 0 from UI, which will be given to your API.
Correct.
So automate those business flows which sends the data or passes the data to some other infra component, but not too much in detail if internal. If it's a merchant facing or public facing API, run all those scenarios, but again prioritize P0, P1, P2, and try to cover P0 first, then P1, and then if you want, you can go for P2.
Got it. This is a question again from there, and okay, this is a small question which you can quickly comment.
Mm.
You mentioned Kunal about a open source testing library which had a better execution time
Correct.
as compared to API, as compared to Cypress. Charles, want to know its name, so if you can type it in chat and if it's shareable, then
Sure,
that will
I'll
help.
just put it in the mat. So there is a library called Axios, which we are using to replace all API calls, and we compare the speed and everything, and this is way better because Cypress always launches a browser instance even to make an API call, which is not needed, which consumes time. So this is like a faster option for us.
Got it. This is a question from Dayanand. Okay. Again, what automation frameworks are flexible to choose from if the functional test scenarios also need to be tested for performance test load and scalability?
Hmm, good question. So at some point we have to draw a line. There is not a single tool that can do everything for us. That is why there are tools targeting different part of the application. So if you want to do just UI automation, you have Selenium, Cypress, and so on. But those are time consuming thing. So if you say I want to submit 100 what do you say 100 purchase order, doing it via UI will cost you a lot. Doing it via API seems like a more viable option, but if you use API with Cypress, for example, if you have already automated that flow, if you try to run it 100 times, the amount of time it will take to complete that is way more compared to a tool like JMeter or LoadRunner or something else. So depending on your need, have specific tools. Don't have one-stop solution for everything.
Got it. Got it.
Yep, good point.
I
Cypress
think,
is good.
yeah, I think there was one question about enterprise cloud application. Kunal, could you look into this?
The ERP
The
one,
processing
right?
part, yeah, yeah.
Wait. Okay, so I'm checking on Google, so I'm not checking exactly for Oracle because I have no context about it, so I might give you a misleading answer. So
What you can do,
basically,
I think, what I can do, what then I think you can do is that you can connect with Kunal on LinkedIn and have a specific question, specific discussion about this topic. I think that will help in general, because Kunal doesn't have too much context about the kind of tools you are, the application you are saying here. So I would recommend you to connect with him on LinkedIn and possibly take this offline in the interest of others' lack of knowledge also and lack of context in general.
sure, definitely.
I'll ask this last question, Kunal, okay? Because this happens a lot of time with people, especially people who start testing automation for the in early times. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, is that what would you do if you noticed one of your automated tests is failing frequently and
Mm.
largely failing through because of its flaky nature?
Okay.
So what do you do? This is my last question, and then we
Mm.
wrap this up.
Okay. So what I generally do is, whatever execution I do, I store those execution result somewhere in a file in database, and then I have a script that will go through the database. For example, it will see what all cases are failing. So we set a threshold. What is my flakiness threshold? So if I say my threshold is 80%, which means if a test is failing more than 2 times out of 10 runs, then I would say this test is flaky. And I would turn off the execution of those tests. So I don't want that flaky test to be part of my main suite. My next step would be to understand, is this flaky test a business critical test, or is it a trivial test, or is it just a cosmetic one? Based on that, I will allocate time on urgency of fixing. If it's
Correct.
a business critical one and if it is failing frequently, if it is breaching my threshold limit, then my priority one would be to investigate what's going wrong. May it can be your slave issue where the test is running. It can be your network issue. So at home you would have 200 gig of internet speed where everything runs properly, but
Hmm.
when the request is sent to a slave system which is running on 50 gig bandwidth connection,
Correct.
your application becomes slow and it starts failing, or the application load can cause this slowness. Understand what is causing it. Try to, once you know you have fixed it, try to do multiple iterations of run. And then I have another script which will just run all those flaky tests. Once those flaky tests start giving consistent result, it will automatically add it back to the primary suite.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. That's a very interesting advice, Kunal. I think with that, I'll take one more question from Bharat, okay? Which is about we are new to ETL testing and we want to do automation. So, how to approach and if you can help them from ETL testing from your experience?
I haven't done ETL testing so far, but it seems like you want to process a lot of data. So look for tool, like for example, Retool is one tool which can go through a lot of data and it can build workflow. So it's like a low code tool right now. So you have Retool, you have Pipedream that are low code tool where you can just feed them the file, they will do the processing, they will give you the output. But I haven't done ETL before, so this might not be the right tool, but I can look into it and I can help you out.
Got it. So, again, Bharat, you can connect with Kunal on LinkedIn and probably both of you can jam and get things done. Got it. So with that, I would like to thank Kunal first for taking time out. I think it's quite late for him in Singapore right now, but taking time out for this session, and I think you answered questions uh, very interestingly, and some of the hacks were really good. I think it came out from a practitioner's mind. Somebody who has actually practiced automation and automation tools a lot in general. Good answers, and thank you to all the attendees for joining in. I know it's a late midweek evening for all of you, and for people from north, you're battling a lot of winters here. So thank you for joining in, and we hope to see you soon With that, thank you everyone, and thank you Kunal once again for doing this for us.
Thank you, guys. I enjoyed all the questions that you had.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.